There's not many more thrilling places on Earth than at a racetrack or at a theme park, unless you think stuff like golf is thrilling, and at that point I'm really worried for you. But isn't it wonderful when the two most exciting places on Earth combine to make what should be one of the most exciting rides on Earth, but instead ends up as a big waste of everyone's time and money? In fact, one of the biggest wastes of money that any roller coaster project has ever seen. Today I'm going to be recovering a story of a ride so iconic despite it barely ever running, a ride seen by millions of people throughout the world but only ridden by a handful. Today I'm going to be recovering the story of Ring Racer at the Nurburgring. If you go on to enjoy this video, then please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to me, and it is the best way to show me that you like this form of content, and I'm getting close to 1.5k, which would be nice, so thank you. So for the uninitiated, the Nurburgring, also known as the Green Hell for two good reasons. It's green and it's hell. No, but in all honesty, the Nurburgring is one of the most challenging racing circuits to ever exist, with a debatable 90 corners that some people call 40 and some people call 150, because motorsport fans can't have anything better to do than to decide if that left is left enough. Anywho, the people who owned this bit of asphalt in the Eifel Mountains decided that they wanted to turn it into a bit more of a holiday destination, a more multi-day thing while people are also there for the racing. An experience, a holiday destination, a motorsport Disneyland, or as it was affectionately called, Neuro Disney. This project also had a secret codename so that no one knew what was coming, when or where. This codename was Nurburgring 2009. Okay, it wasn't that secret. But this project was huge and consisted of the following. Indoor shopping centre called Ring Boulevard, the only shopping centre in the world where it actually makes sense to have those little car showrooms. No, I'm not walking out of Westfield Stratford with a Polestar. An arena called, well, Ring Arena. I didn't say these names were inventive. Hotels and a holiday park, which I can't find much about, but I know that at the Nurburgring now there is bowling. No, that was the Hungaroring. And important to our story, Ringwerk, a museum and educational theme park with one signature attraction. Can you guess what it is? Ring Racer was a much more ambitious project than I think any of us ever really remembered. It was planned in 2007 to be open for spring 2009. When this was first planned in 2007, the fastest roller coaster in the world was King Dakar at Six Flags Great Adventure. Coincidentally, a ride that's also now defunct. Sorry for the spoiler. King Dakar's top speed was 128 miles per hour, and Ring Racer was planned to have a top speed of 135, which would have made it the fastest roller coaster in the world. And the craziest stat? It had a faster acceleration than the modern day F1 car at the time. The 2007 F1 car had an acceleration of around 11.7 meters per second squared. Ring Racer was planned to have an acceleration of 24.1 meters per second squared. To put that into perspective, the fastest accelerating coaster in 2026, Max Force, has an acceleration of 20.5 meters per second squared. So in short, Ring Racer was going to be quick. Oddly enough, there was a faster accelerating roller coaster at the time, Dodonpa at Fuji-Q Highland, made by the same manufacturer who is going to make Ring Racer, S&S. So in short, this thing was a monster, faster than a flash and quicker than a hiccup. But what would it actually do with that speed? Well, the ride would start by going through some slow turns to simulate a race car warming up their tyres before a race, and also add that little bit more suspense to the ride. Then, showtime. The ride lined up alongside the main straight, the 5 red lights build, and when they went green, the ride would launch up to its top speed of 135 miles an hour. This launch track was located directly alongside the start-finish straight for the GP circuit, making riders feel like you really were blasting down towards turn 1. Red lights would build, 5 red lights would go green, and you would be underway at the fastest speed any roller coaster has ever been at. And then you kind of just go straight, and then you'd hit the brakes. I know, not as exciting as we expected. The ride would then travel up a 123-foot turnaround before going through a building that currently has a tattoo shop below it, which is sick. We need more roller coasters that go through tattoo shops, please. While in this room, the track would flatten out and do precisely nothing, before doing a slight S-bend to get back into the station in Ringwerk. So yeah, a bit pointless. Well, not pointless exactly. The ride for exactly one purpose, to be the fastest roller coaster in the world. So work got started. In January 2008, the Nurburgring announced that Ring Racer would open as soon as August 2009. So chop chop. So, the fastest ride in the world, how exactly would this be done? Well, SNS had a real specialty in the early 2000s of compressed air launch roller coasters. These coasters were some of the fastest accelerating roller coasters on Earth, including Dodonpa and Hypersonic XLC. I say including, those were the only two. But at least those two would be popular and reliable, right? So Hypersonic XLC opened in 2001 and then closed in 2002 so that they can make reliability adjustments. It would then operate sporadically for the next few years before in 2007 the park would put the ride up for sale, before Ring Racer had even been announced. Dodonpa would also suffer similar downtime, but considering Fuji-Q kind of operate their rides on which way the cows are facing, I'm not entirely sure this was all Dodonpa's fault. Nurburgring were taking a little bit of a punt here, and as in motorsport, taking a punt can sometimes turn out so right, but sometimes can go so wrong. Construction went ahead as planned, and with it being a relatively short roller coaster, a short turnaround wasn't out of the question. And in fact, the construction times actually brought forward to try and have the ride open for the 2009 German Grand Prix in July. And although they didn't have it ready for the public during that event, they did have some celebrity guest riders try out the ride themselves. 7-time Formula 1 World Champion Michael Schumacher got to ride the ride before anyone else, alongside other German personalities such as tennis star Boris Becker, which was a huge help for the popularity of the ride. So that was it. Michael and Boris became some of the first people to ride the new fastest roller coaster in the world. Except they didn't. During initial testing, the engineers working on the ride discovered a slight problem with the brakes, meaning that it wouldn't be able to safely and sufficiently slow down the ride enough for it to be safe for public riders. Some people have even speculated that this was a cover-up, and in fact, because of the altitude of the Nurburgring, the 30-meter long pressure tank that was brought in as a power supply for the launch wasn't strong enough, and the ride was never going to be able to get up to that speed. So because of this, the ride's top speed was taken down from 217 kilometers an hour to 170, making it the 4th fastest roller coaster in the world. Even so, the ride speed was still impressive, even if it didn't really do anything with it. But testing and tweaking was still ongoing so that the ride could have a grand public opening in August of 2009. But August came and went. And then we entered September, still undergoing testing. And then it happened. On September the 3rd, 2009, during the test run of a ride, a sudden pressure release from the pneumatic air system caused a series of powerful explosions. Powerful enough to shatter the windows of the nearby buildings and also do some pretty extensive damage to the ride itself. During the incident, 7 contractors working on the 2009 project were injured and taken to hospital. The details of why this accident occurred were never really publicized, but rumors spread from it being a software glitch to the engineers wanting to test a higher speed for the launch. Regardless, the ride was closed for inspection and stayed closed for a very long time. Closed for the entirety of 2010 in fact, with engineers and project managers hoping that 2011 would bring better fortunes. What 2011 brought instead was the direct opposite of better fortunes. In fact, it was the exact same fortunes. In May 2011, a second explosion happened on Ring Racer due to the exact same issue, this time sending shrapnel from the ride all the way over the main straight into the pit lane of the Nurburgring. Luckily, no one was injured in this accident, however, there was a big cleanup to happen. So 3 years, 0 public riders, and 2 massive explosions. This thing was destined for the bin, right? On a cold Halloween afternoon in 2013, our very own roller coaster zombie came back to life, and at 2 PM, Ring Racer opened to the public. And I have no idea why. The whole point of the ride was to add another thing for people to do while the race weekend was going on, but on this weekend, there was no racing. Obviously you have track days and public driving at the ring, but nothing else was drawing people to the area for this weekend. But there we finally have it. People have finally ridden the fastest roller coaster in the world. Just not here. So due to the earlier issues, Ring Racer now hits a top speed of 99 miles an hour. Rough. At this point, Formula Rossa had also opened in Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi, hitting a top speed of 149 miles an hour, which was more than even the original target for Ring Racer. So even if all went to plan, Ring Racer only would have been the fastest roller coaster in the world for less than a year. But it's open. So how did operating go? Well, on opening day, it operated from 2 p.m. until 5:30 p.m. So 3.5 hours of operating. Not great. This continued for the next 4 days, and on day 5, it closed. And it has never operated a single day since. A grand total of 14 hours of operation. Rides have operated in a single day for longer than that. So there were a number of factors as to why Ring Racer barely operated once it opened. First of all, it was November, and it was the Eiffel Mountains. It's freezing. The weather was probably playing tricks on the launch system, and to be honest, I don't think many people were going outside. Secondly, because of all the issues during testing, the Nurburgring did get a permit to operate this ride, but with a weird clause in it. The ride could only operate if 2 ambulances and 2 50-meter boom arms were present and operating every time this ride ran, which just isn't feasible. And apparently the reason why this clause was put into the contract in the first place was because people were fearing that if the riders got stuck upside down, they wouldn't be saved. Big problem with that, this ride didn't go upside down. Even if it did, that's not how physics works. Genuinely, the only reason that you could get stuck upside down on this thing is if you did a handstand while boarding. Now, although the ride is closed, the story does not end there, because let me tell you, there was a lot of dodgy dealings here. Cost-wise, although the Rollercoaster only cost about 12 million euros in the end, the entire Nurburgring 2009 project cost a ludicrous amount of money. This money was supposed to come from private investors, but eventually that money dried up, and the Nurburgring ended up taking a loan from the government of €500 million. And then they spent all that too, meaning that the project was 300 million euros in debt. In 2012, before the ride had even opened, the owners of the Nurburgring filed for bankruptcy, and when Capricorn bought the track in 2014, they had no interest in running Ring Racer ever again. You may be wondering where all of this money could have even gone, and apparently a lot of people are. You remember I said Boris Becker rode this ride? So apparently he was offered 500,000 euros for 8 appearances advertising the Nurburgring 2009 project, and this was one of them. This was deemed dodgy enough to have a full financial investigation, and Boris Becker ended up suing the people who owned the Nurburgring because he didn't get his full sum of money. So again, where was all this money going? Well then in 2014, the finance minister for the entire state ended up being jailed over misleading the government over the usage of private loans which was gotten for this project, with the circuit CEO also serving a 19-month suspended sentence. All the while a reported 250 million euros are still missing from this project. By the way, both of the men in this situation ended up with cushy jobs in the FIA, so fork found in kitchen. As for Ring Racer, these days, the majority of the Ring Racer has been taken down, with no intentions of a replacement. The big turnaround still remains, casting shadows on the main straight where drivers still pass to this day, passing a ride over and over again that tried to prove that it was faster than them, and lost. And that is the story of Ring Racer. Do you ever think there'll be a project like this ever again? Let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your mates and subscribe. Subscribing is the best way to let me know that you enjoy this content. If you want to find me elsewhere, then all my socials are in the description below, but especially my Instagram, calvix.jpg. I'm posting a lot more short form content over there at the minute, so please give that a follow. But yeah, that's about it. I've been Cal, thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon.